Rob Donn was a bard who was born in Donn in 1714, so 300 years ago. And the thing that's special about Rob Donn is he gives us a snapshot of social history in Scotland at the time, 300 years ago, which is quite unique in a way. When you think of Gaelic poetry, we think of the bards. The bards were trained, and it took years and years to train as a bard. So these were educated people. But Rob Donn was illiterate, a crofter's son from the far north of Scotland. And he was born at a time in Scotland when there was great turmoil. There was a Jacobite rising. But to a large extent, the people's lives in Donn remained unaffected by this turmoil because they were Hanoverians and they were left in peace. So Rob Donn gives us a snapshot of life 300 years ago. He doesn't speak about the clan chiefs. He doesn't generally speak about love. He did sometimes. He doesn't generally speak about the countryside. He did sometimes. But mostly he loved to write about ordinary people and their lives, what they were up to. And that's what's interesting for us today in terms of like social history. He's a very important bard. In Gaelic, classical Gaelic, they would be praising the clan chief because the clan chief was paying their wages, so of course they would praise him up to the hilt, how brave he was. But it wasn't given as a true picture of life of the ordinary people in Scotland. Rob Donn sometimes spoke quite sharply in his poems, criticising people, maybe being a wee bit judgmental, but that's what makes it interesting as well. One of the poems, for example, is criticising two bachelors for how mean they were in their life. He tells us that they didn't do any good, they didn't do any bad, but they didn't do any good either. And, you know, making us question our lives and what we're doing with our lives. So he had a very deep social conscience. When Rob Donn was writing poetry, he got straight to the heart of the matter. He didn't mince his words. His words went like a dagger, straight to the point. And at the time, I'm sure many people were offended, but they also loved him. They loved their bard. He was very musical, composed tunes for his poems, and one time he wasn't invited to a local wedding, and he was, as they would say in Glasgow, black affronted. So he decided to wreak revenge by writing a poem about someone at the wedding who lost their trousers, and accusing all the different guests who was it that stole these trousers. And I'm sure there was great hilarity at the time at the expense of the bride's father and mother who hadn't invited Rob Donn to the wedding. So they were a wee bit in fear of him, they were a wee bit, and once or twice he was warned as well. He was warned off, like, don't you be writing about that, Rob. But of course, I think if somebody said that to him, Rob Donn would, well, I say writing, but he just composed them. He didn't write anything. If he was warned off, he would then set about making up a rhyme about that circumstances. The poem where he was criticising the misers, I'm going to read to you the verse about they didn't make much difference. I'll read it to you in English first. They were men who caused no dissension, so far as anyone knew, nor did they perform one act that the world calls grace. But they were conceived and born, and they were reared and they grew, A sweep of life passed over them, and in the end they died. But it's much more lyrical in Gaelic. Dunya nach der ein brishach iad, she fiesrachol duchach, is havor a reinied undat, rish an can and sul gras. Ach ginnig iad is rukig iad, is hookig iad is gas. Hij strak gan tool harish ora, smoeierig hur iad bas.